This is my final lesson plan for CMM Math, spring of 2022 with Dr. Brogdon. My lesson title is If You Were a Fraction. The standards that I chose for this lesson are 3N.2. This standard is add and subtract multi-digit whole numbers, multiply with factors up to 10, represent multiplication and division in various ways, solve real-world and mathematical problems through the representation of related operations. 3N.2.1, represent multiplication facts by using variety of approaches such as repeated addition, equal size groups, array, area models, equal jumps on a number line, and skip counting. 3N.2.2, demonstrate fluency of multiplication facts with factors up to 10. 3N.2.3, use strategies and algorithms based on knowledge of place value and equality to fluently add and subtract multi-digit numbers. 3N.2.4, recognize when to round numbers and apply understanding to round numbers to the nearest 10,000, 1,000, 100, and 10, and use compatible numbers to estimate sums and differences. 3N.2.5, use addition and subtraction to solve real-world and mathematical problems involving whole numbers. Use various strategies, including the relationship between addition and subtraction, the use of technology, and the context of the problem to assess the reasonableness of results. Learning objectives and goals, create and design, apply and solve, understand, explain, remember, define, evaluate, and support. I can create and design a pizza that shows I know how to add and subtract fractions. I can apply my knowledge of adding and subtracting fractions by solving how many toppings are on a pizza. I can understand how to add and subtract fractions by explaining how to do so in my creation of pizza pie's presentation. I can remember how much fraction is valued by defining each fraction in my presentation. I can evaluate myself through the formative assessment and performance assessment, as well as supporting my peers by being attentive and listening through the small group and individual work and presentations. Formative assessment. For the formative assessment, I will have the students do a pizza fraction to add how much of the pizza is there. This activity consists of having a laminated pizza divided into different sizes. This assessment will be done in groups. I will write different sizes of fractions on the pizza, such as 1/2, 1/4, 2/3, and so on, and the students will have to put the fraction on the correct size of the pizza. I will have them record on a sheet of paper if each piece of pizza equals a whole pizza. I will set these stations up all around the room, and after each pair of students have completely finished, they will move to their next station. I would say the duration of time for this activity would take around 1 hour since each student has only one partner. There's a link for the pizza activity, and it looks like this. Performance assessment. For the performance assessment, I will have my students create their own pizza fraction presentation. The presentation does not have to be perfect. This is just to evaluate if the students correctly learned how to add fractions by participating in the pizza fraction activities. For the presentation, students will be paired into groups of 2. They will be given a pizza box and will use their creativity to create their own style of pizza. They can use the toppings to allow other students to identify the fraction of how much of each topping is on the slice of pizza. Such as one slice of pizza, there's 1/2 pepperoni and 1/4 of an onion. For the last of the presentation, I want the students to prepare a video of their group identifying the fractions on the pizza. I created a scoring rubric and categories, working with others, explanation, neatness and organization, and the use of manipulatives. Lesson structure. For the hook. When first beginning the lesson over adding fractions, I will have the students watch a fun video over adding fractions to gain their attention over the assignment we will be doing after. The video is just used as a way to gain the attention of the students in a fun, interactive video. After the students have watched the video as a whole group, we will have a discussion about what they learned from the video about adding fractions. Questions that I will ask: what is a fraction? The video is also linked in the lesson plan. Exploration. To begin exploration, I will have a fun activity for my students to do after we have read the book, If You Were a Fraction. For this activity, my students will come in and sit down together. After watching the video from the hook and discussing the objectives, I will now tell my students the next part of the activity that they will be doing. I will tell my students that around the room, I have placed pieces of fractions that have their name on it that they will collect. I will then tell my students that they can begin looking for the fraction pieces, and once they have found their fraction pieces, they are expected to return to their designated seating area. After each student has collected their fraction pieces, I will then ask the students to tell me what fractions they have collected, and we will write them down. This is over the vocab from our anchor chart that was created. So the vocab on my anchor chart was addition, the process of finding the total or sum by combining two or more numbers; subtraction, the after process of taking one number away from another; like denominators, the bottom number of the fraction is the same; unlike denominators, the bottom of the number of the fraction is different and will have to be changed to like denominators to add or subtract the fraction; numerator, the number above the line in a fraction; denominator, the number below a line in a fraction; and simplify. This means to reduce a fraction to its lowest terms. I also put my anchor chart on the lesson plan. We do. This is known as the guided practice. In the guided practice of this assignment, we as a class will read the book, If You Were a Fraction. While reading the book, I will have the students have a pencil and a piece of paper out, because as we read and come across fractions in the book, I want my students to write the fraction down. Once we have finished reading the book, I will ask the students how many fractions they got and what those fractions were. The reason we will discuss what fractions they wrote down and how many is to make sure that each student has the correct number of fractions and the correct way to be written down. I will guide the students through problem solving, because some students might struggle or feel overwhelmed with this portion. After reading and problem solving, the students will do their formative assessment. The formative assessment will include stations. There will be groups of two. The students will have a piece of paper in hand. They will start off the stations by putting their correct fractions down. Some of the rows will equal up to a whole fraction or a whole number such as 1. They will count each row, and if it equals up to 1, they will demonstrate that on their paper. Excuse me. After finishing up this with their station, they will move to the next. Once all students have made it to their original starting spot, I will collect all the papers and use that as my tool to assess them and their learning, along with my monitoring them throughout their process. This is the independent practice. Excuse me. For the independent practice, I will use the performance assessment. The performance assessment is going to be a presentation that the students will create. I will put the students in groups of 2. They will be assessed over including a short activity, for example, a Kahoot quiz. I will help them with making these. They will also define definitions of each fraction, a picture of each fraction, and 2 or more questions about the fraction, such as what portion of the pizza is half, what does half fraction mean in terms. I will then allow my students to do those on a sheet of paper at their desk. For the last part of the presentation, I would like the students to show a video using technology over how to count and add fractions. I will help the students navigate through their presentation, having organization. For gifted, talented students, I would have them help other students after finishing their own group presentation. This allows them to think and see from their peers' point of view. For lesson closure, I would start by going over the objectives we have learned and ask the students to reflect over their learning experiences with this lesson. I will go over the objectives one by one and ask students to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on how they thought they did throughout it all. This means throughout working alone, working in a group, staying focused, and their understanding of the lesson. If a student responds back with a thumbs down, I will then ask them what they think they need help on with improving before the next time. It is important for students to be able to correct their mistakes and self-correct to improve. Technology. The teacher can use technology by showing videos of different ways to add fractions. The teacher can also use technology by using an audiobook of If You Were a Fraction. So the students will use technology to participate by making a Kahoot activity and finding a video to use. Differentiation, accommodations, and modifications. For the students with intellectual disabilities, I will create a graphic organizer for them to help the students navigate their way through the lesson. For gifted and talented, I will assign them a student to help after they have completed their work. This allows for them to see from their peers' point of view when they are working. For classroom management, I will use a callback of a bell. For instance, when working at stations, I will have a bell that the students will ring when they have finished that station, and I will come check that they have completed it before moving on to the next station. This will be taught on the first day of school so that during station, students know what is expected, and it will work effectively to ensure that the students are learning the material before moving on. And that is it.